Vote counting has begun in Thailand after a general election marred by disruption and protests. Anti-government demonstrators forced around 1 in 10 polling stations to close. Scott Heidler has the latest from Bangkok.
In her North Bangkok neighborhood, Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra arrived just as the polls opened. Setting an example she hoped millions of Thais would follow on Sunday.
As Thais, it's our duty to exercise our right to vote. It doesn't matter who you vote for, but we must support the election process.
But in other parts of the capital, there were problems.
This is Ratchathani, one of the polling positions here in Bangkok. Now, even though Suthep Thaugsuban, the leader of the protesters, vowed not to prevent voters from coming in, his followers have stationed themselves right outside this polling position. Now, the organizers here opened the polls on time at 8 a.m., but they closed them at 9 a.m. because they're worried about voter safety.
More than 400 polling centers were closed in Bangkok. Some were blocked, some never got their paper ballots, and some have no workers.
My right is to stand here and make sure there is reform first, before voting.
But 93% of the polling centers were able to open in the capital, and around 90% across the country were accepting voters. But because of the disruptions,
the exact number of the voters who would wish to exercise their electoral rights would not be made known. And that's most unfortunate, but it also clearly shows that the protesters are in the minority.
In the Dindang district of the capital, the two sides squared off near a polling center. Officials there shut down voting. Later, the anti-government protesters pulled back, and a group of people who were denied their vote marched to the municipal building.
I'm disappointed I can't vote. This is a democracy, but people can't show that they support the election.
They broke through the front gate and demanded that they be allowed to vote. But they'll have to wait until special elections are scheduled for those Thais who could not vote on Sunday. With no clear, definitive results expected for weeks, there's little chance that the election will soften the divisions between the Thai people. Nor will there be progress in mending the political divide that has paralyzed the government. Scott Heidler, Al Jazeera, Bangkok.
Well, for more on this, we're joined now from Bangkok by Professor Krayungsak Jaranwongsak, who is president of the Institute of Future Studies for Development in Thailand. Now, the opposition never wanted this vote. It's now saying that it's gathering legal evidence to annul it. Will it have a case?
I cannot make out of it what was being said.
Krayungsak Jaranwongsak, I'll repeat the question. The opposition did not want this vote. It's now trying to annul it by taking the battle to court. Will it have a case?
Yes, all the technicality of legality is always possible in every direction you can take, because whatever shape or form you do today, you bound to violate certain articles somewhere, and therefore, yes, it's up to interpretation, and it can be a case. But whether the ruling can go in favor of the government or to the protester, we yet to see.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of where what we're asking now, isn't it? What's next for the opposition's move? Is it going to look towards a judicial coup?
Well, I cannot blame them to that level, but if the judiciary are doing it properly by rule of law and rule with some evidence, then you cannot call it a judicial coup. But if they do it in a way which is clearly, blatantly trying to get rid of the government in an unfair manner, maybe you can call it that way.
Is the judiciary independent?
You have to see the evidence first. Let's see. Yes, I think largely the judiciary have a lot of people involved. Inside the judiciary, they were trained to be independent, but of course, both sides are inside the judiciary. Those who lean towards the government and those who don't lean to the government, but they may not intentionally being that way. Some of them, we don't know whether who happen to take the case, they are leaning in their interpretation on certain way. Therefore, I think the evidence will have to be judged on its own merit.
Okay. The election itself is still not over, is it? Because protesters blocked so many of the polling stations. That leaves Thailand in political limbo.
Yes, Thailand will be in this limbo for the next 3 to 6 months because all those seats unfilled will need to have some sort of an election date set and by-election for certain seats. And it will take a long time before we can have the quorum for the parliament to convene to select the prime minister. Therefore, we'll be in this setting for a longer time. The tension will continue. Both sides will continue to move according to their own agenda. And I do not see the solution come quickly. Of course, under this kind of pressure, maybe if something untoward happens, it may be because of the pressure is so great to try to bring some solution to a closure. And this may happen during the next 3 to 6 months or even sooner. But I think if we continue this process with just ceremonial in terms of procedural democracy or democracy in form only, but the essence is not there, unless there is some real talk between the two sides and you keep pushing and fighting for legality and the technicality of the legal matters, I think there will be no solution because both sides are powerful enough to continue to confront one another. And on the street, it could be ugly, and I hope they would have some sensibility to talk.
Okay. Kreng Sak, Jaron Wonsak, thank you very much for joining us there from Bangkok with your political analysis.